The morning sun cast long shadows across the courtyard of Kensington Palace as 10-year-old Prince George walked quietly through the gardens. His small footsteps made no sound on the carefully maintained gravel paths, but his presence was felt by every member of the Royal Protection Squad stationed around the grounds. Today was different from other days, though none of the guards could pinpoint exactly why. Detective Inspector James Morrison had been protecting the royal family for 15 years. He stood at his usual post near the main entrance, watching the young prince through his peripheral vision. Something about George's demeanor caught his attention. The boy moved with unusual purpose, stopping occasionally to observe the guards at their stations. His bright blue eyes seemed to be studying each officer with an intensity that was both curious and concerning. Prince George had always been a thoughtful child, but recently his behavior had shifted. His parents, Prince William and Catherine, had noticed their eldest son becoming increasingly quiet during family meals. He would ask unexpected questions about duty, service, and what it meant to help others. When they tried to understand what was troubling him, George would simply smile and change the subject. The previous week, George had witnessed something that changed his perspective forever. During a routine outing to a London charity event, he had seen his security detail in action when a small crowd gathered too close to the royal family. The way the guards immediately formed a protective barrier around him and his siblings had made a deep impression on the young prince. He watched how these men and women put themselves at risk without hesitation, all to keep his family safe. That evening, George had asked his father a question that left Prince William speechless. "Papa, do the guards ever get to see their own children?" The innocent inquiry revealed that George had been thinking about the sacrifices made by those who served his family. He had noticed how Detective Inspector Morrison sometimes looked sad when checking his phone, and how Sergeant Phillips always seemed tired during weekend duties. Detective Inspector Morrison had indeed been struggling with his own family situation. His teenage daughter Emma had been asking why he missed so many school events and family dinners. His wife Sarah had grown accustomed to eating alone most evenings, as royal protection duties demanded long and unpredictable hours. The job he had once loved was becoming a source of guilt and regret as he watched his own children grow up from the sidelines. Prince George had overheard a conversation between two guards, discussing their personal challenges. Officer Jenkins mentioned that his young son had stopped asking when Daddy would come home, accepting that work always came first. Sergeant Williams shared that her daughter's birthday party would be another event she would miss due to royal commitments. These conversations planted a seed in George's mind that would soon grow into something much larger. The young prince began to understand that his protection came at a personal cost to many families. He realized that while he was surrounded by people dedicated to his safety, these same people were sacrificing time with their own loved ones. This revelation troubled George deeply, as he had been raised to value family above all else. During his quiet walks through the palace grounds, George would observe the guards more carefully. He noticed the way Officer Thompson's face lit up when he received a text from his wife, and how Detective Sergeant Adams kept a photo of her children tucked inside her uniform pocket. He saw the human side of these dedicated professionals and began to feel a weight of responsibility he had never experienced before. George's mother, Catherine, found him one evening sitting by his bedroom window, looking out at the guards patrolling the gardens below. When she asked what he was thinking about, George turned to her with tears in his eyes. "Mummy, is it fair that they have to choose between protecting us and being with their families?" The question revealed the depth of his concern and the moral struggle he was experiencing. The conversation with his mother that night would become a turning point. Catherine explained that the guards chose their profession because they believed in serving something greater than themselves. She told George that duty and service were important values, but she also acknowledged his concerns about the personal sacrifices involved. Her gentle wisdom helped George understand the complexity of the situation while validating his compassionate instincts. As the days passed, Prince George continued to wrestle with these thoughts. He began to see his privileged position not just as something he was born into, but as something that required others to give up precious time with their own families. This awareness began to shape a decision in his young mind, one that would soon have profound implications for everyone around him. The palace staff noticed subtle changes in Prince George's behavior. He began greeting the guards by name, asking about their families and showing genuine interest in their well-being. His small acts of kindness did not go unnoticed, but no one could have predicted what the thoughtful prince was planning to do next. 3 weeks after his conversation with his mother, Prince George made an announcement that stunned his family during their private breakfast. As Prince William buttered his toast and Catherine poured juice for Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, George cleared his throat and spoke with unusual formality for a 10-year-old. "I have been thinking about something very important," George began, his voice steady but soft. "I want to give up my royal protection when I turn 18. The silence that followed was deafening. Prince William nearly choked on his coffee, while Catherine set down the juice pitcher with trembling hands. Even 4-year-old Prince Louis seemed to sense the gravity of his brother's words. Prince William was the first to recover from the shock. "George, you don't understand what you're saying," he said gently but firmly. "Royal protection isn't optional. It's necessary for your safety and the security of our entire family." But George had anticipated this response. He had been researching and thinking about this decision for weeks, and he was prepared to explain his reasoning. "Papa, I know it sounds crazy, but I've been watching our guards. Detective Inspector Morrison hasn't seen his daughter's school play in 2 years. Sergeant Phillips works every weekend and misses church with her family. Officer Jenkins told another guard that his son asked why Daddy cares more about protecting other people's children than spending time with his own." George's voice cracked slightly as he shared these observations. Catherine reached across the table and took her son's hand. "George, these are grown-ups who chose their careers. They understand the requirements of their jobs." But George shook his head, his determination unwavering. He had thought about this response too, and he was ready with his own perspective. "But Mummy, just because they chose this job doesn't mean it's right for me to take them away from their families for my whole life. When I become an adult, I want to try living like a normal person. I want to see if I can be safe without making other families sacrifice so much." His mature reasoning caught both parents off guard. The conversation continued for over an hour, with Prince William and Catherine taking turns trying to help George understand the complexities and dangers of royal life. They explained threats, security protocols, and the responsibility that came with his position. But with each argument they presented, George had a thoughtful response that revealed just how deeply he had considered this decision. "What about when you have official duties?" Prince William asked. "What about when you represent the monarchy at important events?" George had thought about this too. "I could have protection during official royal duties, but for my personal life I want to try being independent. I want to go to university, make friends, and maybe even have a job without a security team following me everywhere." Catherine could see that her son was not making this decision lightly. His empathy for the guards and their families was genuine, and his desire for personal freedom was understandable. But the practical implications terrified her. "George, there are people who might want to hurt you simply because of who you are. Your safety isn't just about you. It affects all of us." Over the following days, George's announcement became the subject of intense discussion within the immediate royal family. Prince William spoke with his father, King Charles III, who was initially dismissive of what he considered a child's naive notion. However, when William shared the depth of George's reasoning and his genuine concern for the guards' families, even the king began to take the matter more seriously. The royal protection team remained unaware of George's declaration, but they began to notice even more changes in the young prince's behavior. He started asking guards about their families with increased frequency. He would inquire about their children's ages, their hobbies, and their upcoming family events. His genuine interest touched the hearts of these dedicated professionals. Detective Inspector Morrison found himself particularly moved by Prince George's attention. When the prince asked about Emma's upcoming school concert, Morrison felt a pang of sadness knowing he would miss another important moment in his daughter's life. George seemed to sense this conflict and said quietly, "I hope you can make it to her concert, Detective Inspector Morrison. I bet she would love to have her father there." The comment stayed with Morrison for days. That evening, he called his wife Sarah and for the first time in years requested a schedule change so he could attend Emma's concert. His supervisor was surprised by the request, as Morrison had never asked for personal time during royal duties. The change was approved, and Morrison felt a mixture of gratitude and guilt about prioritizing his family over his royal responsibilities. Prince George's quiet observations and questions were having an unexpected effect on the entire security team. Guards who had become accustomed to missing family events began to question whether their sacrifices were truly necessary or simply routine. Some started to wonder if there might be ways to better balance their professional duties with their personal lives. Sergeant Phillips found herself thinking about Prince George's words during her weekend shift. Her daughter had stopped mentioning church events, assuming her mother would be working anyway. The realization that she had become so absent from her family's spiritual life because of work obligations was both heartbreaking and eye-opening. The young prince continued his quiet campaign of awareness, never directly criticizing the security arrangements but simply showing genuine interest in the people who served his family. His natural empathy and thoughtful questions were creating a ripple effect that would soon reach far beyond the palace walls. Meanwhile, Prince William and Catherine were grappling with how to respond to their son's unprecedented request. They knew that George was serious about his decision, and his reasoning was both mature and compassionate. The question was whether they should support his choice or insist that royal duty must come before personal desires. The ripple effects of Prince George's observations began to spread throughout the Royal Protection Unit in ways no one had anticipated. Detective Inspector Morrison's decision to attend his daughter Emma's concert had not gone unnoticed by his colleagues. When he returned to work the following Monday with photos of Emma's performance on his phone and a genuine smile on his face, other guards began to wonder if they too might find ways to prioritize their families occasionally. Officer Jenkins approached Morrison during their coffee break, his voice hesitant but hopeful. "James, I heard you made it to Emma's concert. How did you manage to get the time off?" Morrison explained that he had simply asked for a schedule adjustment and was surprised when it was approved without question. This revelation sparked something in Jenkins that had been dormant for months. "My son Tommy has a football match this Saturday," Jenkins shared quietly. "He's been asking if I'll be there, but I haven't made it to a single game this season." Morrison encouraged his colleague to speak with their supervisor about adjusting his weekend rotation. "The worst they can say is no, but you might be surprised by their response." That afternoon, Jenkins submitted his first personal time request in over a year. His hands shook slightly as he filled out the form, knowing that he had never prioritized his family over royal duties before. To his amazement, the request was approved within hours. His supervisor, Chief Inspector Reynolds, mentioned that the royal family had recently emphasized the importance of work-life balance for their protection staff. Prince George continued his quiet mission of connecting with the guards on a personal level, unaware that his simple questions and genuine interest were creating significant changes. When he asked Officer Thompson about his newborn son, the guard's face lit up with pride and joy. George listened intently as Thompson described the baby's first smile and his wife's recovery from childbirth. "It must be hard to be away from them so much," George observed with the innocent wisdom that only children possess. Thompson nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. He had missed the baby's first laugh and several sleepless nights when his wife needed support. The prince's empathy made these sacrifices feel both more meaningful and more painful. At the same time, Catherine had been watching her son's interactions with the security team and was beginning to understand the profound impact of his decision to truly see these people as human beings rather than just uniformed protectors. She decided to have another conversation with George about his plans to give up royal protection, this time approaching the topic differently. "George, I can see how much you care about our guards and their families," Catherine said as they walked through the palace gardens together. "Your father and I have been thinking about what you said, and we want you to know that we're listening." George looked up at his mother with hopeful eyes, encouraged by her more open tone. "I've been thinking too, Mummy," George replied. "Maybe there could be a compromise. Maybe the guards could work shorter shifts or take turns so they can spend more time with their families. I don't need someone watching me every single minute, especially when I'm just at home or school." His suggestion revealed that he had been considering practical solutions rather than simply rejecting the entire security system. Catherine realized that her son's proposal had merit beyond his desire for independence. The current security arrangements had been designed during a different era, when royal family members lived more formal, restricted lives. Perhaps it was time to consider whether modern royal protection could be more flexible and family-friendly for the guards themselves. That evening, Catherine shared George's compromise ideas with Prince William. They both agreed that their son's compassionate approach to the security issue was worth exploring, even if his ultimate goal of living without protection remained unrealistic. They decided to quietly investigate whether changes could be made to improve the work-life balance of their protection team. Prince William arranged a confidential meeting with Chief Inspector Reynolds to discuss potential modifications to the Royal Protection protocols. During their conversation, Reynolds admitted that staff morale had been a growing concern, with several experienced guards considering transfers to other divisions due to the demanding schedule and family pressures. The irony is that our most dedicated officers are the ones who struggle most with the personal sacrifices, Reynolds explained. They care so deeply about protecting the royal family that they often neglect their own families in the process. It's becoming a significant retention issue. This information confirmed what George had observed through his interactions with the guards. Reynolds also shared that he had noticed positive changes in the team's morale over the past few weeks. Several guards had requested personal time for family events, and productivity had actually improved when officers returned from these brief breaks. There's something to be said for guards who feel valued as human beings, not just as security assets, he observed. Meanwhile, Sergeant Phillips had attended her daughter's school play for the first time in 2 years, thanks to a schedule adjustment that allowed her to take one evening off. Her daughter's surprise and joy at seeing her mother in the audience had been overwhelming. Phillips realized that her presence at family events was not just important to her loved ones but essential for her own sense of purpose and fulfillment. The security team began talking among themselves about the changes they were experiencing. Guard after guard shared stories of attending family events, helping with homework, or simply being present for dinner conversations. The common thread was that Prince George had somehow made them feel seen and valued as people with lives beyond their professional duties. Detective Inspector Morrison's wife, Sarah, noticed the difference in her husband immediately. "You seem happier lately," she told him one evening. "More present when you're home." Morrison explained that he had been thinking about the balance between his work and family commitments, inspired partly by conversations with Prince George about the importance of family time. As word of these positive changes spread quietly through the Royal Protection Unit, something unexpected began to happen. Instead of feeling less dedicated to their jobs, the guards found themselves more motivated and focused during their shifts. They approached their duties with renewed energy, knowing that their personal lives were also being respected and valued. 2 months after Prince George's initial announcement, the changes within the Royal Protection Unit had become impossible to ignore. Chief Inspector Reynolds found himself managing a team that was more energized, more committed, and paradoxically more effective than ever before. The simple act of acknowledging the guards as people with families had transformed the entire dynamic of royal security. However, not everyone was pleased with these developments. Some senior officials within the royal household expressed concern about what they perceived as a relaxation of security protocols. Lord Chamberlain Sir Edward Hastings called an urgent meeting with Prince William to address what he considered a dangerous precedent. "Your Royal Highness, we cannot allow sentiment to compromise security," Sir Edward stated firmly during their private meeting. "The protection of the royal family is paramount, and any deviation from established protocols could have serious consequences." His traditional approach reflected decades of rigid security thinking that prioritized protection above all other considerations. Prince William found himself in a difficult position. He could see the positive effects of the changes on both his son and the security team, but he also understood the legitimate concerns about maintaining safety standards. "Sir Edward, I appreciate your concerns, but we haven't actually reduced security measures. We've simply allowed for more flexible scheduling that considers the personal needs of our protection officers." The debate highlighted a fundamental conflict between old and new approaches to royal protection. The traditional model demanded complete dedication from security personnel, with little regard for their personal lives. The emerging model, inspired by Prince George's observations, sought to balance effective protection with human dignity and family considerations. Prince George remained unaware of the controversy his compassionate observations had sparked in the upper levels of royal administration. He continued his quiet interactions with the guards, always showing genuine interest in their families and well-being. His natural empathy had become a powerful force for positive change, even though he had no intention of causing institutional upheaval. Officer Jenkins had attended his son Tommy's football match and was amazed by the boy's reaction to seeing his father in the stands. Tommy had scored his first goal of the season and immediately looked toward his father with pure joy. After the match, Tommy told his teammates that his dad was a police officer who protected the royal family, beaming with pride that had been absent for months. "Dad, can you come to more matches?" Tommy asked as they walked home together. Jenkins felt his heart break and heal simultaneously, realizing how much his presence meant to his son and how much he had been missing by always putting work first. "I'll try my best, Tommy, I really will," he promised, meaning every word. Catherine decided to have a more formal conversation with George about his long-term plans. She wanted to understand whether his desire to give up royal protection was still firm, or if the recent changes had influenced his thinking. They sat together in her private sitting room, away from the formality of official palace spaces. "George, I've been watching how you've connected with our security team," Catherine began gently. "You've made a real difference in their lives. Do you still feel strongly about giving up protection when you're older?" Her question was carefully neutral, allowing George to express his current feelings without pressure. George considered his mother's question thoughtfully before responding. "I still think I should try living without full-time protection when I'm an adult," he said. "But I'm happy that the guards can spend more time with their families now. Maybe that's even more important than what happens to me in the future." His response revealed a mature understanding of immediate versus long-term impact. "What if there were other ways to make changes?" Catherine asked. "What if we could create a system where you have protection when you need it, but the guards also have better work-life balance?" She was testing whether George might be open to compromise solutions that addressed his concerns while maintaining necessary security. George's eyes brightened at this suggestion. "Do you think that could work? Like having different teams that take turns, so no one has to miss too many family things?" His enthusiasm showed that he was more interested in solving the human problem than in simply rejecting protection entirely. Meanwhile, Detective Inspector Morrison had been approached by colleagues from other royal protection details who had heard about the positive changes in Prince George's security team. They were curious about how the improved work-life balance had been achieved without compromising security effectiveness. Morrison found himself becoming an informal advocate for more humane security practices. "The prince is different," Morrison explained to a colleague from Prince Harry's former security detail. "He actually sees us as people, not just uniforms. When leadership notices that kind of humanity, it creates space for everyone to be more human." His observation highlighted how Prince George's natural empathy had created a ripple effect throughout the system. Sergeant Phillips had experienced her own revelation when her daughter asked her to help with a school project about careers. For the first time in years, Phillips was able to describe her work with genuine enthusiasm, explaining how she helped keep important people safe while also having time for family activities. Her daughter's pride in her mother's profession had been evident and deeply moving. The success of the scheduling changes had begun to attract attention from security experts outside the royal household. A study conducted by the Metropolitan Police found that officers with better work-life balance actually performed more effectively during their shifts, with improved alertness, better decision-making, and stronger teamwork. The Royal Protection Unit was becoming an unexpected model for progressive security practices. Chief Inspector Reynolds compiled a comprehensive report on the changes implemented over the past 2 months. The data showed reduced sick leave, improved staff retention, increased job satisfaction, and most importantly, no reduction in security effectiveness. In fact, several metrics indicated that protection quality had actually improved as guards approached their duties with renewed dedication and energy. Prince William reviewed Reynolds' report with growing confidence that his son's instincts had been correct. The evidence clearly showed that treating security personnel as whole human beings rather than just protective assets had strengthened rather than weakened royal protection. He began to consider how these principles might be applied more broadly within the royal household. The transformation sparked by Prince George's simple questions and genuine concern was proving that compassionate leadership could achieve better results than rigid authoritarianism. The young prince's silent choice to truly see and value the people who served his family was creating lasting change that went far beyond anyone's expectations. The success of the royal protection reforms had reached the attention of King Charles III, who requested a private meeting with his grandson to understand the young prince's perspective. The meeting took place in the king's study at Clarence House, a setting that might have intimidated most 10-year-olds but seemed to have little effect on Prince George's quiet confidence. "George, your father tells me you've been thinking quite seriously about royal protection and the people who provide it," King Charles began, his tone gentle but curious. "I'd like to understand your thoughts on these matters." The king had initially been skeptical of what he considered childish idealism, but the documented improvements in security effectiveness had captured his attention. Prince George sat straight in his chair, meeting his grandfather's gaze directly. "Grandfather, I noticed that the people who protect us never seemed very happy. When I started asking them about their families, I realized they were sad, because they couldn't spend time with the people they love. That didn't seem right to me." His simple explanation cut to the heart of a complex institutional issue. The king was struck by his grandson's ability to identify a fundamental problem that seasoned administrators had overlooked for decades. "And you believe that allowing them time with their families makes them better at their jobs?" King Charles asked, genuinely interested in George's reasoning. "I think when people feel cared about, they care more about their work," George replied. Detective Inspector Morrison smiles more now that he can go to his daughter's school events. Sergeant Phillips seems stronger since she started going to church with her family again. "Happy people do better work, don't they?" His logic was unassailable in its simplicity. King Charles realized that his grandson had instinctively understood something that many leaders struggle to grasp, that treating people with dignity and consideration ultimately serves everyone's best interests. "You may be right, George. But what about your own future? Your father mentioned that you're considering giving up royal protection entirely when you're older." George nodded seriously. "I want to try living more like a normal person when I grow up. I know there might be risks, but I think it's important to show that royal family members can be independent and still be safe. Maybe other people would feel more comfortable around us if we didn't always have guards with us." His vision extended beyond personal preference to broader questions about royal accessibility and public relations. The conversation continued for nearly an hour, with King Charles finding himself increasingly impressed by his grandson's thoughtful approach to complex issues. George's desire for independence wasn't rebellious or naive. It was based on careful observation and genuine concern for others. The king began to see how such an approach might actually strengthen the monarchy's connection with ordinary citizens. Following his meeting with George, King Charles instructed the royal household to conduct a comprehensive review of all protection protocols across the royal family. He wanted to understand whether the improvements seen in George's security detail could be implemented more broadly without compromising safety. The young prince's insights had sparked what would become the most significant reform of royal security in decades. Meanwhile, the positive changes continued to ripple through the Royal Protection Unit. Officer Thompson had been able to take paternity leave when his second child was born, something that would have been impossible under the old system. His gratitude toward the royal family had deepened, knowing that they had prioritized his family's needs during such an important time. Detective Sergeant Adams found that her improved work schedule had allowed her to return to university part-time, pursuing a degree in criminology that would enhance her professional skills. The royal family's support for her educational goals had strengthened her commitment to her role while also investing in her future. She often thought about how Prince George's simple questions had led to such meaningful changes in her life. The media had begun to notice subtle differences in the royal family's public appearances. Security arrangements seemed more relaxed and natural, with guards appearing more at ease and engaged rather than rigidly formal. Royal photographers noted that the protection team's improved morale was visible in their body language and interactions with the public. Prince George's younger siblings, Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis, had also been influenced by their brother's compassionate approach to the security team. Charlotte, now 7 years old, had begun asking guards about their children and drawing pictures for officers' families. Prince Louis, though still very young, would wave enthusiastically at the guards and thank them for keeping his family safe. Catherine observed how George's influence had created a more humanized atmosphere throughout their household. Staff members at all levels seemed more relaxed and engaged, knowing that the royal family genuinely cared about their well-being. The changes had strengthened rather than weakened the bonds of loyalty and dedication that made royal security effective. The success of the protection reforms had attracted international attention from other royal families and government security agencies. Representatives from several European monarchies had quietly requested briefings on the new approaches being implemented in the British royal household. Prince George's compassionate insights were inspiring changes far beyond his own family's security. Arrangements Chief Inspector Reynolds received an invitation to speak at an international security conference about balancing personnel welfare with protection effectiveness. He would credit a 10-year-old prince with teaching experienced security professionals important lessons about human motivation and organizational excellence. The irony was not lost on him that some of the most valuable security insights had come from someone who ultimately wanted to live without security. As the reforms continued to prove successful, Prince William began planning for more extensive changes to royal protocols. He envisioned a modernized monarchy that maintained necessary security while allowing for greater personal freedom and authentic public interactions. His son's vision of independence no longer seemed naive but rather prophetic of changes that would benefit the entire royal institution. The transformation that had begun with Prince George's simple observations about his guards' happiness had evolved into a comprehensive rethinking of how the royal family related to the people who served them. The young prince's silent choice to truly see and value others had created waves of positive change that continued to expand in unexpected directions. 6 months after George's initial announcement, the Royal Protection Unit had become a model organization within the security community. Staff retention was at an all-time high. Job satisfaction scores had improved dramatically, and security effectiveness had actually increased. The success provided concrete evidence that compassionate leadership could achieve better results than traditional authoritarian approaches. As Prince George's 11th birthday approached, an unexpected crisis tested the new security arrangements and the young prince's resolve. Intelligence reports indicated a credible threat against the royal family, requiring heightened security measures that would temporarily restrict the improved work-life balance the guards had come to value. Detective Inspector Morrison received the briefing about the threat during an emergency meeting at Scotland Yard. The details were serious enough to require round-the-clock protection with minimal staff rotation for at least 2 weeks. As he drove back to Kensington Palace, Morrison struggled with how to tell his daughter Emma that he would miss her upcoming school graduation after all. The security team gathered that evening for an urgent briefing about the new threat level. Chief Inspector Reynolds explained that the improved scheduling and family-friendly policies would need to be suspended temporarily. The room fell silent as guards realized they would return to the demanding schedules they had worked so hard to change. Sergeant Phillips felt her heart sink as she calculated that she would miss her son's confirmation ceremony, an event she had promised to attend. Officer Jenkins realized he would be working through his wedding anniversary for the first time in 2 years. The personal costs of the heightened security brought into sharp focus how much the recent changes had meant to everyone. Prince George sensed the change in atmosphere immediately when he encountered Detective Inspector Morrison the next morning. The guard's usual warm greeting was replaced by a professional nod, and his eyes held the familiar sadness that had been absent for months. George's intuition told him something significant had changed. "Detective Inspector Morrison, you seem worried today," George observed gently. "Is everything all right?" His innocent question opened a floodgate of conflicted emotions for Morrison, who struggled to maintain professional composure while dealing with personal disappointment about missing his daughter's graduation. Morrison hesitated before responding, unsure how much he should share with the young prince about security matters. "There are some changes to our schedules, Your Highness. Nothing for you to worry about, but it means some of us will be working longer hours for a while." His careful explanation revealed his internal struggle. Between duty and family commitments, Prince George immediately understood the implications. "Does this mean you'll miss Emma's graduation?" he asked quietly. Morrison's surprised expression confirmed that the prince had indeed grasped the situation. The boy's genuine concern and quick understanding of the personal impact touched Morrison deeply. That evening, Prince George approached his parents with a request that demonstrated remarkable maturity and selflessness. "Mommy, Papa, I know there's some kind of danger right now that means the guards have to work extra hard," he began. "But what if I stayed closer to home for a while? What if I didn't do any public events or school trips until the danger is over? Then maybe the guards wouldn't have to work such long hours." Prince William and Catherine were astounded by their son's proposal. He was offering to restrict his own activities to allow the security team more flexibility in their scheduling. The suggestion showed that George had learned to think systematically about security challenges and their human impact. "George, that's incredibly thoughtful," Catherine said. "But you shouldn't have to limit your life because of security threats. That's exactly what the protection is meant to prevent." However, she could see that her son had inherited her own tendency to put others' needs before his own. Prince George persisted with his reasoning. "But if I stay home more, fewer guards would be needed at any one time. Some of them could still go to their family events, just maybe not all at once. Detective Inspector Morrison's daughter is graduating, and Sergeant Phillips's son is being confirmed. Those are really important things." His detailed knowledge of the guards' personal lives demonstrated how deeply he had connected with them. The conversation continued late into the evening, with George presenting thoughtful arguments for why temporary lifestyle adjustments could help balance security needs with the guards' family obligations. His parents realized that their son's empathy and problem-solving skills had evolved far beyond his years. Prince William decided to consult with Chief Inspector Reynolds about George's proposal. During their meeting, Reynolds admitted that he had been struggling with how to maintain security effectiveness while destroying the improved morale his team had achieved. The prince's suggestion offered a potential solution that could address both concerns. If His Royal Highness were willing to maintain a lower profile temporarily, we could implement a modified rotation system, Reynolds explained. It wouldn't solve all the scheduling conflicts, but it might allow us to honor some of the most important family commitments. The security chief was impressed by the young prince's strategic thinking about protection logistics. Meanwhile, word of the threat and the scheduling changes had spread through the security team. Guards who had grown accustomed to better work-life balance were facing the prospect of returning to the old system of constant availability and family sacrifice. The contrast made the temporary restrictions feel even more difficult than they might have before the reforms. Officer Thompson approached Detective Inspector Morrison during a quiet moment in their shift. "James, I heard about Emma's graduation. I know how much that means to you both." Morrison nodded, unable to trust his voice as he thought about disappointing his daughter once again. The camaraderie among the guards had strengthened during the months of improved scheduling. "What if we worked out some kind of coverage arrangement?" Thompson suggested. "Maybe we could trade shifts or work extra hours to make sure some of the most important events don't get missed." His proposal reflected the team's commitment to supporting each other through difficult circumstances. The idea of guards voluntarily covering for each other's family obligations spread quickly through the unit. Instead of accepting that everyone would have to sacrifice their personal lives, the team began organizing informal shift trades and coverage arrangements. The collaborative spirit that George's reforms had fostered was now helping them navigate the crisis. Prince George noticed the increased activity and tension among his security detail, but also observed something else. The guards were working together more closely than ever before. Their mutual support and willingness to help each other maintain family connections showed that the changes in culture were deeper and more lasting than anyone had anticipated. The crisis would ultimately test not just the security arrangements, but the entire philosophy of balancing professional duty with human dignity that Prince George had inspired. The young prince's continued compassion and practical problem-solving would prove that his vision of reformed royal protection could withstand even the most challenging circumstances. The resolution of the crisis came in a way that no one could have predicted, ultimately validating Prince George's faith in the power of compassion and human connection. 3 weeks into the heightened security period, a breakthrough in the investigation eliminated the threat entirely, but the experience had already transformed the Royal Protection Unit in ways that would last far beyond the emergency. Detective Inspector Morrison stood in the audience at his daughter, Emma's graduation ceremony, tears in his eyes as she received her diploma. Through the innovative scheduling arrangements his colleagues had created, he had been able to attend after all. Emma's radiant smile when she spotted him in the crowd made every sacrifice worthwhile. Later, she would tell him it was the best graduation gift she could have received. The collaborative spirit that had emerged during the crisis had proven that the Guards' commitment to each other and to the royal family was stronger than ever. Instead of the threat period weakening the reforms Prince George had inspired, it had actually strengthened them by demonstrating that the team could maintain both security, effectiveness, and personal values even under pressure. Sergeant Phillips had also made it to her son's confirmation ceremony, thanks to Officer Jenkins covering an extra shift so she could attend. As she watched her son receive the sacrament, she reflected on how Prince George's simple questions about her faith had led to this moment of being present for one of the most important events in her child's life. The young prince's influence had rippled through their entire family's spiritual journey. Chief Inspector Reynolds compiled a final report on the security improvements that had been implemented over the past year. The data was remarkable. Staff retention had improved by 40%. Job satisfaction ratings had reached the highest levels in the unit's history, and security effectiveness had actually increased during the crisis period due to improved teamwork and communication among the guards. King Charles III requested a meeting with Prince George to discuss the long-term implications of the changes his grandson had inspired. The conversation took place in the gardens at Highgrove, where they walked among the organic plants the king had cultivated with such care over the years. "George, you've accomplished something quite extraordinary," the king said as they paused beside a flowering apple tree. "You've shown us that caring for the people who serve us ultimately makes us all safer and stronger. These are lessons that will serve you well when you're older, regardless of what level of protection you choose to have." Prince George smiled at his grandfather's words, pleased that the changes had been beneficial for everyone involved. "I'm still planning to try living without full protection when I grow up," he said. "But now I know that whatever security I do have will be provided by people who feel valued and cared for. That makes me feel safer than any number of guards who were unhappy." The king nodded thoughtfully, beginning to understand how his grandson's approach might actually enhance rather than compromise royal security in the long term. "Perhaps your vision of independence and our need for protection aren't as incompatible as we initially thought," he suggested. "Maybe you're showing us a path toward a more modern and effective approach to royal security." Prince William and Catherine had watched their son's influence on the royal household with growing pride and amazement. George's natural empathy and moral courage had created positive changes that extended far beyond the security team to affect the entire culture of royal service. Staff members at all levels reported feeling more valued and respected. The success of the royal protection reforms had attracted international attention, with security experts from around the world studying the British approach. A case study of the changes was published in a prestigious security journal, though it tactfully avoided mentioning that the reforms had been inspired by a 10-year-old boy's compassionate observations. Detective Inspector Morrison found himself promoted to Deputy Chief Inspector, partly in recognition of his role in implementing the new approaches to team management and personnel welfare. During his promotion ceremony, he privately thanked Prince George for asking questions that had changed his life and career in ways he never could have imagined. As Prince George approached his 12th birthday, the question of his future protection arrangements remained open. But the context had changed completely. The royal family now understood that effective security could coexist with respect for human dignity and family values. George's desire for independence no longer seemed threatening to security officials, but rather inspiring of creative solutions. The guards who had been most affected by the changes organized a quiet celebration for Prince George's birthday, presenting him with a scrapbook filled with photos of the family events they had been able to attend because of the reformed scheduling. Each photo was accompanied by a note thanking the young prince for helping them become better parents, spouses, and individuals while remaining dedicated protectors. Prince George was moved to tears by the gift, understanding that his simple desire to see the guards as complete human beings had created a circle of positive change that benefited everyone. The scrapbook would become one of his most treasured possessions, a reminder that small acts of compassion could have profound and lasting effects. Officer Jenkins included a photo from his son Tommy's championship football match, which he had been able to attend thanks to the new scheduling flexibility. His note read, "Your Royal Highness, because you cared enough to ask about my family. I was there when my son scored the winning goal. Thank you for helping me be the father I always wanted to be, while still serving your family with pride." The story of Prince George's silent choice to value the people who served his family had come full circle. What began as a young boy's empathetic observations had evolved into a comprehensive transformation of royal security that served as a model for organizations worldwide. The prince's vision of independence remained unchanged, but it was now supported by a security system that reflected his values of compassion, dignity, and human connection. As the Royal Protection Unit continued to evolve and improve, one thing remained constant: the memory of a 10-year-old prince who had asked simple questions about happiness and family, forever changing how the monarchy understood the relationship between service and humanity. Prince George's silent choice had spoken louder than any royal proclamation, proving that true leadership begins with seeing and valuing the people around us.